But Max today with his first article since joining ESPN, and it's about the transfer portal, giving everybody in perspective a lot of numbers. And you look at how many players, how many athletes have hit the portal. That's not a surprise. Most of it's pretty much what we knew. But you look at the Power Four, 1,273 players signed in the transfer portal, 1,078 G5, and then 2,351 overall players have gone into the transfer portal. That's even a higher number than I can fathom. If there's 130-something teams in Division I, or FBS, and you put an average of, let's say, 10, if you even did 10, I mean, okay, that's 11. What is that? That 1,100?
Yeah, 1,300.
It just seems like a lot of people, a lot of players, a lot of names. But there are the numbers. He updated that. He'll join us tomorrow at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, and I can't wait to get into some of the bigger numbers with him. It was weird. If you look at the retention numbers versus the teams that lost a bunch, the only team that lost a bunch that didn't struggle a year ago, at least to some degree, or have was Alabama, and all the rest of them struggled. And then most of them also had coaching changes, so that would put Alabama in that boat. But Alabama had 31 guys gone, which is a huge number for them. But then when you look at the ones that are retention, I couldn't really find a common thread between those. Like there wasn't. It was just kind of, I guess they're in a good spot with their coach. You know, that's kind of how it looked to me. It was such a weird thing. There was no Venn diagram really with the other one. They all kind of were in the same boat, rough season or lost the coach or whatever. And then the ones that kept a bunch of players was more like, okay, just all different situations. So that was kind of a weird thing. 883
players, Craig, jumped into the portal that ended up in a Power 4 or FBS level. 883, which is almost twice as much as they did the year before. And usually that means somebody's scholarships aren't available. Perhaps that goes down to the high school level. But with Max, with those numbers today.
Yeah, I don't know what that trickles down to or whatnot. I think it's become pretty clear that, high school recruiting's still very important, but it's taken a little bit of a backseat compared to the transfer portal in terms of importance. So, yeah, I mean, there's thousands of people moving around. I don't think that should really be surprising at this point, given how hectic it gets when those windows are open and how much we talk about it ad nauseum during those windows of now this guy's in and this guy's in and this guy's committed here. I mean, you could have told me 3,000. I would have believed it. I don't really spend a lot of time thinking about the exact numbers and what those look like, but you could have said fill in the blank, and I would have been like, yep, sure, that sounds about right. The only thing I would have balked at was if you had said it was like, less than a couple hundred, I'd be like, that's obviously BS because there's no way. It's got to be closer to 1,000. So, yeah, that jives with the chaos, if you will, and just the amount of crazy turnover on rosters all across the country. So glad to see Max back doing his thing and, still doing the portal stuff, and I look forward to what else he's got up his sleeve with ESPN.
So there's numbers on the transfer portal. More from him. He'll join us tomorrow at 4 o'clock. The All-American team today released by ESPN. Chris Lowe had this article. And here are the names of the players from the Big 12 who are ranked or a part of at least the first or second team, including McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona. He is one of them. Travis Hunter, not a surprise, first-team all-purpose player from Colorado is on that list as well. Secondly, on a running back, Ollie Gordon was first-team running back. Taj Brooks was a second-team running back. So there's a couple of Big 12 players. Tight end, Brant Keithy from Utah. And then also Luke Kendra, the Cincinnati offensive lineman, both second-team. And so those are the players from within the Big 12 on the preseason All-American team put out today. There's a bunch of them. I know Brett McMurphy will have one among some others, but that's the preseason All-American team with some of the higher names, at least now, as we enter the season.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to see the guys on it. I mean, Ollie Gordon is probably the best running back coming back in the whole country. I was a little surprised not to see Quinshawn Judkins, but he's also in a timeshare situation. But as far as Big 12 players go, those are the ones you'd want to hit. And between the P4, like they kind of hit the big spots. I think there's probably some other guys who are clearly going to sneak up there and and be on the list that are unsung right now and flying under the radar and not from some of those premier programs. But if I'm picking the offensive lineman, I'm picking a Johnny Cornelius and Parker Brailsford and guys like that. That's who I'd pick. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel, but not surprised, especially to see Hunter, McMillan, and Gordon on the list.
Yeah, I mean the Big 12's got a good stable of running backs, and I'm sure that won't prevent from still hearing the age-old soured opinion of it's all pure air raid and no defense, like as we talked about at length yesterday. But again, that's just a total sign for you to just zone out on anybody saying that still and talking about the Big 12 with any type of authority. So yeah, there's good backs. Ollie Gordon, I am very curious as to what his follow-up is going to look like, and obviously had a issue this offseason that we talked about at length around media days. We're behind that now, and he's behind that now, and that's all in the past, hopefully. And so now it's about football, and I look forward to seeing what he could possibly do to top last year, which would include more team-oriented goals, I would imagine, like winning the Big 12 championship and taking home a trophy like that as opposed to finishing runner-up. But, individually, he's going to be exciting to watch. Taj Brooks is right there in the same boat. I'm sure he'd much prefer to have a better team year in some capacity than an individual, but individually, he's a guy that's going to be right there near the top of the best running backs in America, so long as his health is there. I feel strongly about that, especially when you feel like Tech's O-line could be better, and he did all that behind an O-line at Tech last year that wasn't the best. So his follow-up will be really interesting as well. I mean, no surprise to see Teteroa McMillan. He's right there in the conversation for best wide receiver. Brant Keithy coming off the injury. Not a lot of people anticipated much of a slow rebound for him, so that's good, and good to see him on there, and that obviously adds a bit of ammo to Utah, and nice to see a Cincinnati mentioned because they're not getting a whole lot of love these days and really haven't since the playoff run. It's been a trying couple of years in this transition, but good to see Luke Kandra, giving them something to talk about that's good and positive, and hopefully something they can, kind of spider web from.
There was a comment from Steven in the chat room about confused with the wide receivers. Have they not seen Egbuka at Ohio State? Well, there's only 4 wide receivers. The wide receivers on the first team include 2 of them, Luther Burden from Missouri, and it's hard to argue against him, and then McMillan at Arizona. The backups, and I say backups, second team names were Trey Johnson, Oregon, and also Torrey Hunter. And Torrey Hunter, who's a stud at Colorado State. Again, it's one of those that Egbuka's probably in that conversation, but there's 4 names for the entire preseason All-American team. And that's a bugaboo for me. To have just 2, there's no team now, even those who run the ball quite a bit, that usually don't have at least 3 kind of receivers on the field at one time.
Yeah, you would usually take away a run, like they're doing 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end. But to ESPN's credit and to The Athletic, they both did it the right way when it comes to the offensive and defensive lines and the defensive backs, where they picked a center and a guard and a tackle and a center and a guard and 2 defensive tackles and 2 defensive ends. And
you also missed there's an all-purpose player. So there is.
I said Travis Hunter.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, at the very beginning.
I didn't hear you say Travis Hunter. That's weird. All right, that's my fault then.
No,
but
that's okay.
that fills up one of the wide receiver spots / tight end spots.
That's true.
So that, I think, is incorporated there, but obviously still no Emeka Egbuka. So, yeah, that's a valid question. I mean, he's going to get a lot of love other places and already has, but, yeah, I think it's a lack of room more so than disrespect in the second team all-purpose, Ashton Janti, a running back. So I like to see him getting love and obviously a huge fan of his, but I can understand where you're looking for Emeka Egbuka to appear on a list like this.
Paul sent this to me. Colorado projected to play in what will be 10 one-possession regular season games per K4 ratings, who we had, of course, on the show. And also on that list, for example, Liberty, Vanderbilt, New Mexico, only projected to play in 1 such game, and maybe because of the feeling of they may not be involved, but Liberty's going to be a part of many games that they're supposed to win. But Colorado at the top with 10 one-score games at least projected based on his ratings.
And West Virginia with 9 projected. TCU, Nebraska 8-1 score game. So
that's not good. That's 1-7 right there.
Yeah. But TCU, USC, notables on that line. Florida in 1-score game. So good for the projections for them on that 8. And then you get more and more, and as you whittle down, and when you see 1 or 2 1-score games on a schedule, that usually means your schedule. Like, you might be really good, but also your schedule sucks.
In terms of the one next to your name, yeah. Well, I mean, Liberty and Ian McCaw aren't trying to play anybody. I mean, we know that, so it's not surprising to see Liberty down there because I'm sure he said it publicly. He said it publicly when he was here that they weren't trying to go and schedule. They're trying to get the situation they got last year where, hey, let's be the highest rated G5 and get a sweet bowl game. And I think after their appearance against Oregon, however, that's not going to work as much in their favor, but now you have an expanded playoff, so they'll probably still go that route. But, yeah, they don't really play anybody. They don't. That's good for Caden Salter and his numbers, but I think that's going to hurt you tremendously if you start talking about, anything bigger than your all-conference MVP type of an award, because inevitably somebody's going to go, well, who did you do all that against? And then when they see you play Oregon, and granted Oregon's very good, but when Oregon, makes you look like you don't even belong in the game itself, that's where people have questions about that tactic.
I think this is going to blow up in their face a little bit at Liberty, in that what Ian is trying to do with the schedule there is he's trying to get them to be undefeated so they have a chance to be that 12th team.
Right.
And if they're the 12th team in the playoffs, say 3 of the first 8 years, right, because they're 12-0 every time because of their weak schedule, he's going to be like, oh, we're a 3-time playoff team. But if all 3 of those times you lose to Oregon or Ohio State or LSU in the first round by 40 points, what are we even doing? You got there, but it's a little bit of stolen valor from somebody, who had somebody on their schedule and lost to maybe a couple of P4 teams, but was 10-2 and maybe played Florida and Georgia Tech close and just lost in the end.
Listen, you can do it once. You can kind of fool the system once by having an unbeaten record, but then you also need to follow it up with a bowl game. But we don't need to be hypocritical here because Big 12 teams have been blown out against big boys in some of the bowl games too. But if you can do it once, but then eventually people kind of catch you in the system.
Yeah, but K-State going through a Big 12 schedule, winning the conference, beating a really good TCU team that goes and plays for a national title and getting blown out by Alabama is not Kansas State rigging the system to get to that said bowl game. That's what we're saying is Liberty sets up the easiest possible schedule. Ian McCaw did that when he was here.
Yep.
For the intention of winning as many games as possible to put them in a nice bowl game. And it worked last year, and then they got destroyed against the first real team they played, and that's what I'm saying is that it's not going to fool anybody anymore when they see that regular season schedule.
That's kind of what I was saying. Yeah. But the thing about what Ian was doing as well is he became the AD that hired Bryles. Mm-hmm. They hadn't been to a bowl game in 15 years.
Yeah.
They played the absolute worst 3 or 4 non-conference games on purpose just to get 4 wins, and then they'd have to just win 2 conference games. And then they never really changed it much once they started winning and becoming much more relevant.
It was a good plan to start.
Which is what he's done.
It's a good plan to start out, but then when they got good, it didn't help them, especially when they played in the BCS weekend games or the New Year Six games. When they played those New Year's 6 games and they played teams that they'd never seen the likes of before, it was a struggle for them. And they lost, the Fiesta and Cotton Bowls. I do think in large part.
Those teams were good, man.
They were really good.
They had beaten some good teams in the Big 12. I'm talking about the ones in 10-11 in that time period. Yeah,
but I do think that ultimately that long-term scheduling hurts you. I think it does hurt you in that, you can, because look, yes, they beat Texas and they beat Oklahoma. They beat some good teams in the Big 12, but they knew them. It's when you don't do well against teams that you don't know that I think that really hurts you because.
Well, we now know why they lost to Michigan State because they had video. They had practice video.
And there's all of our time on Liberty for the entire rest of 2024, basically. Exactly but right. I think it's just simple. I just don't think that tactic's going to work. I think you're going to have to be the best G5 team to get a playoff nod now because I think people are wise to what you're doing, Absolutely. And you're not going to rig your way into the playoff every year as the G5 contender. So, one score game, I don't know. That seems awfully light. Whereas, you look at a lot of the 6, 7, 8 one-score games, and there's a lot of Big 12 teams in there. There's a lot of SEC teams in there, and, that just means you're going to have good teams on good teams. And also have average teams on average teams. We have teams that are close to one another, and so I'm looking forward to seeing these close games. I mean, Colorado with 10 on paper, the most. That's brutal potentially if they're what they were last year and not a much better version. But, a lot of people feel like they're going to be a lot better, and we'll know because they're going to play a hell of a schedule to prove whether they are or not. But, West Virginia's got 9 on there. But, again, there's a lot of Big 12, a lot of SEC because those teams match each other pretty closely, so you're expecting one-score games. So, that's to be expected in some cases. But on the other end of the spectrum, I mean, Sam Pittman's got to be counting his lucky stars some ways, 2 one-score games, or is that because they're not expected to be anywhere close? Oh, wait, that's not a good thing for them, is that they're not expected to be within anywhere. Whereas in the same line as them is Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State, all expected to have 2 one-score games, and those are like your early playoff favorites. So, that could bode very well for those schools if it's that much of a cakewalk to the college football playoff.
All right, those teams. There are 2 games. Like Michigan's playing. Ohio State plays Michigan and Penn State, or something like that, or Oregon. That's the 2 one-score games. Now, yesterday evening, Garrett sent us. It's a video, but I don't think we can run it. But here's the picture of the Air Force football team and their uniforms and helmets. And the video is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's even got like guys in those helicopters and combat gear, and all of a sudden they walk through. It's fantastic. We will see the Falcons in Week 3 when they come to Waco to play Baylor in that game at McLean Stadium.
Well, great. I just bought an Air Force helmet. We just got one from Green Gridiron.
Oh, okay.
Now, they're going
to have to send you that thing.
Here's the thing. So when I looked at them, and all the military academies are like this because they're doing, there's teams that do alternate uniforms that are just god-awful. Just awful. And then the military, they have a higher standard to live up to, obviously because of the military. Everything that all 3 of them come out with is amazing. It's all amazing.
I've never seen one of their uniforms, Army, Navy, Air Force, or whoever, ever come out with one that I did not just drool over.
Yeah, they're all pretty cool that we've seen over these last few years. And I think that really that boils down to Nike's clearly using all their creative minds to design the service academies and then throwing up their chalk for everybody else that's apparently gotten new uniforms. That's why we see the base set on everybody who's got new Nike uniforms basically this year. Starts to make more sense of why does everybody have the same shoulder stripes? Why does everybody have the same base? Well, they're all too busy working on these sweet Air Force uniforms and Army Navy uniforms. I guess that's what's happening because these are as unique as they get, and they're really cool looking. And there's a lot of the details on, the reasons for all the insignias and the meanings that those have. And I always enjoy reading the kind of breakdown of what all the different patches and logos and things mean. So you can do that with these as well. And it's a nod to, just had that here, to honor AFSOC with the Air Power Legacy Series is what they're doing with these uniforms. So, look forward to seeing those. I doubt we'd see those in Week 3 against Baylor on the road, but it would be pretty cool if we did.
Now, to be fair to the other schools that maybe don't have this kind of historical context, Navy, Army, Air Force have, hundreds of years of American history that they can honor, as opposed to universities. I mean, they have cool things, but nothing as cool as AFSOC or the Tuskegee Airmen or, the Audie Murphy unit or something like that.
Just the military of history.
Exactly. There's so many these uniforms are to honor General Patton. Oh, well, that makes sense.
I guarantee you when Army and Navy start working on theirs for this year in December, it's almost like it's as top secret as any nuclear type of codes.
You might be able to get that easier.
You might. So Paul sent this also. Grace College, Paul. Tell us about Grace College. They came up with their uniforms, and they actually have logos on the uniforms. Are you telling me nobody has done that yet?
Grace College, an NAIA school, of which I was too lazy to even look up where they are. Grace College.
Indiana.
Okay. In Indiana, Grace College in Indiana, an NAIA school, very smartly, as soon as the rules are changed, it says you can put a patch on your jerseys. They need money more than everybody else does.
Probably.
Yeah. So they were like, okay, let's go out into our community and find somebody to put a patch on the jerseys. They did it, and there you go. So there's the answer to the trivia question 10 years from now. Who was the first college to put an advertising logo on their jerseys? Grace College, an NAI school in Indiana.
Do you know what Zimmer Biomet does? Biomet does?
No, I've no idea.
They're a Fortune 500 company, an orthopedic giant that generated $7.3 billion last year.
So they
and
can
they're
afford
in
the
Warsaw.
patches.
They're right there next to them in Indiana.
So they can afford the patches.
Well, the NAIA was the first to pass the rules allowing this, so it makes sense that their team, one of their teams, would be the first to debut the logo on the jerseys. And as far as the glimpse that we got, it's very understated and very non-noticeable unless you're just looking for it. I don't think too many people are going to have their eye catch that Z and get bogged down and not be able to concentrate on the game like the big fear is, right? And these aren't NASCAR patches like the other fear is. These are just what you see in the NBA and Major League Baseball, basically. So yeah, I don't think that that's going to be too much of an issue for those that don't like the uniforms getting spoiled by ads. So long as they stay this way and they don't compound, and then you've got patches everywhere like the NASCAR uniforms or suits. But yeah, these look okay, and congrats to them on making a little bit of history. And they're not going to be they're the first, but they're definitely not going to be the last. And I wonder what that avalanche of schools announcing similar additions to their uniforms, when that starts to get underway, and just how crazy that gets with the number of schools that'll be doing it. I would imagine everybody is going to use it at some point.
I can't imagine. I wonder, though, about those 5 or 6 and I even think they will. The ones that don't change their uniforms ever, they pretty much are standard Alabama, Texas, etc. If they will do anything, but why not? I mean, they can demand more money for any kind of a patch on their uniforms.
Those schools aren't ever really in desiring, more money or anything. So I'm sure they'll be fine with what they have.
No, they've never made decisions.
Yeah, they've never been driven by money at those institutions. So I doubt that they're going to, try to scrounge a few more dollars out of everything.
Garrett, we're going to leave the other story for later on, a topic that about what you can or cannot do or should not do during football season. I'll give you one note, and then we come back with Joseph Duarte. Houston had a scrimmage last night, Houston football. First-year coach Willie Fritz. So yesterday it was Brett McMurphy had the story about Tennessee and the logos on the field. And, man, people came out of the woodworks. Texas State apparently has already done that. And there are some other schools that have logos already on their stadium field. But that was out there, and so we're starting to see much more of that. It's to the point now where nobody's now – I don't know who was first, but those are going to happen. And you could say, I would think by the start of the year, how many – of the 130-plus FBS schools do you think will have a logo of some sort monetarily on their field by the time they start?
This year, 40%.
40%,
I think this is a big money deal. So that kind of happened late in the game. Every company now is first quarter dollar, second quarter dollar, third quarter dollars. You know how that is. So it makes it hard to sell anything that just pops up. Like if we all of a sudden decided that we wanted to go to some event in October, it's August right now. If we were trying to go find a corporate particular sponsor for it, it would be more difficult because they've already decided the money they're going to spend in October.
They've already decided their fourth quarter.
Yeah, they've already decided October and all that. So they'd have to find new money for it. And we're not even asking for that much money, right? So imagine if you are, say, Arizona, and you are asking Frito-Lay for an extra several $1 million a year to have their logo on the field. They're going to say, listen, we're very interested, but this is probably a next year type thing because
it might be a commitment, but they don't pay till January.
Yeah, exactly, something like that.
I mean, I think the thing you're missing here is that the advertisements are going to be out there, but it's preserving the name. It's not going to be Pilot Knoxville Stadium.
No,
it's going to be Neyland Stadium, and I think that's the notable thing is that you're going to see signage, but it's a hell of a lot better than seeing the the corporate naming of a historic venue. So I think that was a smart thing. Obviously, Tennessee wasn't going to just like roll over and let Neyland Stadium become some corporatized thing. But I'm sure there will be a smaller school where the name doesn't matter as much, that they will have.
Or the name of the stadium also gets logos
on the field or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you're just putting logos on there, everybody's going to have logos sooner rather than later. I don't think we're going to really be that bothered by it ultimately once the action is starting on the field. I'm sure somebody will go further than others, and they'll be made fun of relentlessly for their giant, like, Pepto-Bismol logo or something. But seems like Tennessee's doing it, a good way where it's, definitely going to be noticeable, but not anything that takes away from the history or, the image of Tennessee, so to speak.
That Pepto-Bismol could have been at McLean Stadium on the field last year with the kind of year that they had. But